Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Making It on Mondays session. This is our Q&A session for the month of September. So I hope that you can all see me okay. I'm just going to make sure that everything is set up properly. There we go. Beautiful. All right. So welcome to Making It on Mondays. Making It on Mondays is brought to you by the Acupuncture Pregnancy Clinic, which is an integrative traditional Chinese medicine clinic and an acupuncture clinic dedicated to reproductive health, to IVF support, and to pregnancy care. And these weekly sessions that we bring to you are designed to help and support those on their fertility journey and are all about empowering you, our women and men who are trying to conceive, through providing weekly workshops with relevant and research-based resources. Now, in these weekly sessions, we cover topics such as TCM fertility, nutrition, mindset, as well as tips from the experts, both inside and outside of our clinic. So today I am your host, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Louise Jeffrey. I'm a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, an acupuncturist, and a coach, and I've been in practice helping couples trying to conceive since 2010. So today's session is a Q&A, and we have these Q&A sessions once a month. And we like to have them because we want to give everybody in the group the opportunity to have their questions answered. And we answer any and all of your fertility-related questions. I've had a few questions sent in by people who can't make today's session live. And I've also prepared some of our most commonly asked questions as well. So hopefully I'll be covering pretty much everything. We're going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes together today. So please feel free, if you are here, let me know if you have any questions by putting them in the comments box. I will keep checking to see if there are any. And I'd love for you to let me know in the comments box if there's anything that I share with you today that resonates with you. Or as I say, if you've got any questions about what I'm talking about or any new questions. All righty, tidy. Fantastic. I can see there's a couple of people on, so I'm just going to say hi. All right, beautiful. So today we're going to talk about a few topics and any other questions that come in. We're going to be talking about IVF do's and don'ts. We're going to be talking about nutrition for fertility. We will also touch on supplements. We're going to talk about endometriosis. And as I say, if there are any other questions along the way, we'll aim to answer those too. All right, so let's get started. Here's the first question that got sent in. And this question was, can you give me any do's and don'ts in an IVF cycle that will help me to improve my chances of conceiving? So before we start talking about this topic, I wanted to share something with you. Every day, embryos around the world survive in the uteruses of women who are working in fields, tending to crops, working at checkout counters, enjoying business lunches with wine or jumping on and off bicycles. But your embryo, if you have been going through IVF, is slightly different because you've put such a lot of effort into getting it this far. So for us in our clinic, we say that it's probably worthwhile treating yourself a little bit more gently for the first few weeks during your IVF cycle, in the sense that it's actually just a little bit different to a natural cycle. And we often, people often say to us, how does the embryo is this embryo vulnerable? And is it, I'm so concerned that I'm going to do something that's going to hurt the embryo. And what we want you to know is that, yes, there are certain things you can do to try and protect this little thing. But you've probably heard the analogy of the embryo being like a raspberry seed in a jam sandwich. It's true, it actually can't fall out. But I'm going to talk about some of the precautions that you can think about or that you'd like to take, if you're in an IVF cycle. So let's start with exercise. The question that we always get asked is, can I exercise during an IVF cycle? And what is safe and what is not? Well, let me start off by saying that first of all, exercise is almost always a good thing. Not only does it improve your overall health, but it does a lot for your mental well-being too. Movement such as walking and lightweight exercises and yoga, they're all great. But there's one form of exercise we always tell our patients to refrain from during an IVF stimulation cycle, and that is CrossFit or HIIT, which is really high intensity interval training. And the reason for this is because when you're in an IVF stim cycle, your ovaries are growing and they're becoming much larger. And when that happens, exercise can actually increase your risk of ovarian torsion, which is where the ovary twists on itself and causes a lot of pain. Your body is also having to work really hard in the first part of your stim cycle. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, we want to preserve your qi for the IVF cycle, and high intensity exercise can actually deplete our qi in the short term. So we always just say, very gentle movement is fine, but anything more than that, getting your heart rate above 120, 130 is really not ideal in an IVF cycle. Now, in the second part of your cycle, which is in your 2-week wait, post-embryo transfer, it's really a good idea to avoid too much stretching and avoid, if you're doing yoga, to avoid doing inversions or pelvic twists, just like when you're pregnant. So you're obviously not going to be wanting to do inversions or pelvic twists, and you also don't want to do any heavy weights or anything that compresses the abdomen or the lower back. Very gentle exercise in your 2-week wait is fine, but just don't get your heart rate up too high. And we also suggest that you don't swim in cold water because we don't want to get your uterus cold. We want to keep the uterus really warm so that the blood flows smoothly. Excuse me. And that's also why in Chinese medicine, we also suggest that you avoid icy drinks or chilled food in an IVF cycle. Actually, even when you're trying to conceive. All right. So then a lot of patients also ask us about diet during an IVF cycle. And sometimes they ask, do I have to stop eating sugar or drinking alcohol during an IVF cycle? And what we suggest is that starting to make healthy choices now is going to follow you right through your pregnancy and beyond. Now, we suggest eating a mainly whole food diet with very few processed foods. And if you listen to any of our other lives on fertility nutrition, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on, we suggest starting to eat whole foods in the lead up to trying to conceive. But we also suggest that while you're in an IVF cycle, try to eat organic or pesticide-free, where possible, because harsh chemicals and pesticides can actually interfere with reproduction and with the embryo. Having said that, the key word during an IVF cycle is moderation. So if you really want to have a small dessert or a slice of pizza, if you really feel like it, then go ahead and have it. We always work on the 80-20 rule. And if you're eating well 80% of the time, your body's going to be able to cope with the 20%. So I hope that kind of covers off eating in the IVF cycle. The next question around IVF, people often ask us is, what about coffee and alcohol? Well, what I'll say about that is that there's actually no hard and fast rule here. But what we do know is that studies have shown that even moderate amounts of coffee and alcohol can negatively affect our IVF outcomes. Now, we generally suggest avoiding both coffee and alcohol during an IVF cycle because they put extra strain on our liver. And when we're in a stim cycle, an IVF cycle, our body and our liver is having to work really hard to detoxify the blood from all the stim meds. And so we don't want to add to the load. Now, after embryo transfer, we pretty much consider you to be pregnant, so alcohol should definitely be avoided in the 2-week wait. Now, when it comes to other chemicals and exposure to those sorts of things, we often get asked as well, if I color my hair or I get my nails done during an IVF cycle, is that okay? Well, what we suggest is really avoiding fumes and perfumed skin products, especially in the time after your embryo transfer during your 2-week wait. And this is mainly because embryos actually are particularly sensitive to volatile fumes. And most IVF clinics will advise that you avoid perfumes and strong smells on the skin from the embryo transfer day through your pregnancy test, because the embryo is very sensitive to smells and to fumes. And we also suggest avoiding painting or renovating your house during this time, pretty much for the same reason. And also try to stay away from petrol pump fumes if you can when you're filling up your car. Now, another thing to avoid during an IVF cycle is hot baths or hot tubs and saunas. And the reason for that is that the heat can be actually really damaging to the embryo. And obviously this applies to pregnancy as well. We don't want to get the body temperature up too high. And then the last thing I want to mention for you during your IVF cycle is acupuncture. Now, if you haven't yet included acupuncture alongside your IVF cycle, now might be a good time to do so. And during your IVF cycle, we use particular protocols that focus on microcirculation to the ovaries and to the endometrial lining. And we also focus on regulation of hormones and also helping you to de-stress and relax. Now, most women who have acupuncture have what the IVF nurses call the acupuncture glow after they come out of their treatments because they are so relaxed. All right. So I hope that covers off IVF. Any questions on IVF? And I hope that covers that topic quite well. All right. So question number 2, we've been asked if we can cover off supplements for fertility. And we often get asked, can eating in a certain way help me when I'm trying to conceive? Well, the number one thing to focus on with fertility nutrition is, we always say the number one thing is to really eat clean and eat whole. Now, we know that optimal nutrition provides an optimal ovarian environment for the eggs during that critical maturation process. And when we're looking for optimal nutrition, we really need to be eating clean, and we need to be eating whole, and we need to be eating organic. So here are some tips to help you with that. The first one is pick whole fiber-rich foods that are unprocessed and free from pesticides, free from hormones, free from preservatives and additives. In other words, really try and eat organic where you can. Why? Because we know that pesticides can affect the delicate balance of the reproductive hormones, and they can affect male sperm production too. Now, if you can't eat organic, then make sure you soak your non-peeled fruit and vegetables in warm water, and you can put a tablespoon of bicarb for around 10 to 20 minutes, or a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar before eating or cooking. This won't take off all the pesticides that are inside, but it will certainly take off a lot of the pesticides that are on the outside. Just make sure that you rinse these, these fruit and veg after you've soaked them. So eating clean and eating whole, and in traditional Chinese medicine, we believe in eating a wide variety of tasty fresh foods in season, including healthy protein. Now, whether this is meat or vegetable sourced, it doesn't matter. But I would say that, if you are going to be a vegetarian, and I was vegetarian for 6 or 7 years, it's much harder to get the protein that you need as the building block for cells. You can do it, but it really does take some focusing on macros and those sorts of things. If you are happy to eat, some chicken and fish, or even some red meat, a few times a week is great. Making sure that it's really, grass-fed, organic where possible, and it's free from steroids and hormones. Because, when you're taking IVF medication, your body, as I said, really is experiencing additional physiological demands, because it's got to break down the drugs, it's got to break down the high levels of estrogen. And so we really want to, make sure that we are avoiding too many rich foods. We're also avoiding, too many processed foods with toxicity in them as well. All right. Perfect. Next question. Onto supplements. We get asked these questions a lot, and somebody in the group actually asked, whether we could focus on supplements on this session. So now there actually has been a whole another Making It on Mondays live done with Amy, and I think it was Amanda Habrecht, the fertility naturopath and nutritionist, around supplements. So if this is a topic you want to know a lot more about, because I'm just going to talk a little bit top line today, then please feel free to search for supplements for fertility in the Facebook group, and that will come up. But just to really summarize this and to talk more top line, what we know is that deficiencies in certain vitamins and minerals can really negatively impact our fertility. And when we're starting out on our fertility journey, or even later down the track, and if we don't fall pregnant as easily or as quickly as we would like, we always suggest seeing a health practitioner, like a naturopath or nutritionist, who can run some blood tests and check if there's anything that your body may require more of. In other words, are you deficient in anything? And they're going to be checking for the levels of things like folic acid and other B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants such as CoQ10, and of course, minerals such as zinc, iron, and iodine. Now, the reason we suggest getting a test and not just going out and purchasing all of the above is that there actually may be some levels within your body that are deficient and others that may not require supplementing at all. So we don't just want to go out and kind of have a blanket approach. It's really important, if you can and you're able to, to see a practitioner who can help you with this and really kind of, narrow it down. And if you're not sure of who to see for this sort of thing, or if you need any suggestions of practitioners to see in your area, please let us know if you live in Australia, and we can refer you. And, speak to your practitioner about different supplements and recommended dosages. All right. Then the last question that was sent in prior to this was, I've been told that my endometriosis diagnosis can affect my fertility. Is there anything I can do to counteract this? Well, let's just start from the beginning. We'll start with, what endometriosis is. And obviously, if you have endometriosis, you probably know what it is. But for those that don't have it, endometriosis is where endometrial tissue actually grows outside of the uterine cavity. And it can cause really painful symptoms, heavy periods, period pain, that can get worse with our monthly hormone fluctuations. Now, endo, as we commonly call it, endo actually typically has both an immune and a hormonal component. In other words, it actually falls under autoimmune conditions. And it reduces fertility because it impacts both egg quality and endometrial receptivity. So in other words, the receptivity of the endometrial lining to the embryo. Now, from a Western perspective, the main treatment for endo is actually surgery via laparoscopy. So I'm just moving this up a little bit, to remove that endometrial tissue. The thing with the surgery is, whilst it can be helpful, and of course, we're told that women are more fertile in the 3 to 4 months post-surgery, the surgery can be quite painful and quite invasive, depending on how extensive the endo is. So in Chinese medicine, we see endometriosis as a pattern of combined hormonal imbalance. And we also see it as blood stagnation in the ovaries and the uterus. In other words, that the blood is not flowing as smoothly as it should. It's clotting, it's causing adhesions. And what we do with Chinese medicine is that we utilize acupuncture points that aim to regulate the blood flow in the uterus and the ovaries. And we also use points that reduce pain and inflammation. And we often combine acupuncture with Chinese herbal medicine, which aims to address the underlying hormonal imbalance and improve blood flow. So many women who come to our clinic with endometriosis report a reduction in pain and a lightening of blood flow after being treated with acupuncture and herbs for around 6 to 8 weeks. That's typically what we see happen. And obviously everybody is different. Can't guarantee anything, but a lot of women see, certainly this is our experience, see a reduction in their symptoms. Now, if you have endo and you'd like to talk more about your own particular situation, then feel free to contact us via direct message here on Facebook or email or call the clinic via the website, and we can chat to you a little bit more about the Chinese medicine approach. Of course, it's probably, if you're trying to conceive and you suspect you have endometriosis, or you've been trying to conceive for a very long time and it hasn't happened, and you could have what they call silent endometriosis, which is where you don't actually have the symptoms, then it might be worthwhile chatting to your fertility specialist about having a laparoscopy so they can actually diagnose and see whether or not that's actually a factor for you. All right, so I think that's it for today. I'm just having a little look. I know that we're 19 minutes, so I'm almost going over time. If I hit 20, just within the time limit. I hope that the session was interesting for you, and I hope there's nothing really fundamental that I've left out. If I have, please feel free to leave a comment below. StreamYard, for some reason, is not showing me comments. It says some users can't post comments to some destinations. All right, because I'm on StreamYard. So I hope I didn't miss any comments. If I did, I'm going to go back in and answer your questions on the comments afterwards. But if you want any more detailed or resourceful info about fertility, about all those different topics, please, stay in the Facebook group, sign up for our Instagram as well. And you can also sign up to our mailing list at our website, which is acupuncturepregnancy.com.au. We'll be back next week at the same time for another great session. There won't be a Q&A. It'll be another topic. I think it's myself. And that's it. I'm signing off now. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your evening or your day, depending on what time of the day it is for you. Bye for now.